welcome to another edition of the Wedding Wednesday Report. I'm here with Amanda from Papa Kata, and Amanda, you're one of the founders of Papa Kata, and you've got quite an interesting story, one that will resonate quite well with a lot of our students, because you stumbled upon this particular product when you were getting married. So can you tell us more about that? What was your story?
So we got engaged and we knew we were living in London at the time, and we knew we wanted a marquee wedding in a field in the village where we grew up in Yorkshire. And whilst looking for marquees, we just weren't happy with what was out there.
You weren't inspired?
We certainly weren't inspired. And a chance conversation at work, a girl said to me that she'd had a great party and an amazing teepee the weekend before. So we looked online and just absolutely fell in love with these teepees. But as soon as we phoned the company in London and said, we want to have our wedding in your teepees, they were like, we could not possibly deliver them north. And it was just a flippant conversation. My husband now, he said, well, why don't we buy a couple and see what happens? So we actually built a website, having not bought the teepees, and we built the website. We got our first deposit check-in, which came from Jamie Oliver.
Of course, go right to the top with your first client. Nice.
And as soon as we took that deposit check, we knew that was it. We were in business, and it kind of went from there.
Which is a good story, because it shows our students that actually it is possible. You can take a risk, you can stumble upon a product like that, and you can fall in love with the wedding industry.
And actually just about being brave and believing in, you know, something that you love.
Yourself, the product.
Absolutely.
And your ability.
Definitely.
So Amanda, how did you make the transition from bride to business owner? Because they're two really different hats to wear. And I know certainly from, you know, outsiders' perspective, they imagine themselves as J-Lo in The Wedding Planner, you know, wearing an earpiece, falling in love with Matthew McConaughey. And of course, it's not like that at all. The wedding business is hard work. But how did you make that transition from bride to business owner?
I think a lot of, in the early days, what we did was we ran on fear. We never wanted to let anyone down.
Yeah.
We wanted to make sure that everything went perfectly, which meant we worked every hour that was possible to make sure the event happened. You know, at times my husband especially was putting up teepees through the night just to make sure that we got everything ready in time.
Which is what you tend to do when you're first starting off.
Absolutely. You can't say to somebody, well, actually you're going to have your wedding next week because we're running behind. So it just really doesn't work like that. You know, and you've only got one chance to get it right. And I think the fear and the adrenaline is what got us through. And I certainly haven't had any J-Lo moments of walking around with earpieces. Never really quite that glamorous,
is it? No, and that is something we do try to tell people. You know, when you see it from the bride perspective, you're the client, so it is all lovely and it's all frou-frou and beautiful, etc. But then when you actually see the reality of what it is like to work in the wedding industry, I mean, what would a typical amount of hours be for you setting up an event?
Yeah, well, I mean, an event we try to set up in a day, but that day can be 24 hours depending on how long it takes. So, you know, our crew are working 60, 70 hours a week. I know that the events planners who work in the office are now, you know, they work way over 40, 50 hours a week. And it's not one of those jobs where at 5 o'clock you're kind of watching your clock and it's time to go. If a client needs an answer or has a request for a floor plan, then you just kind of have to go with it, really. But the benefit of having the letters that come to you afterwards with, you know, how pleased the bride and groom are and the feedback you get just absolutely makes everything so worthwhile for us. You know, we still get tingles when we get those letters and when we see the photos and know that we created that, and without us that wouldn't have happened. So
well, that's quite
very
a nice
satisfying.
So what's the typical day for Mama Kata, which obviously is your nickname, and I know this because I've been on your website. So what would a typical day in the life of you be?
Yeah, so we have an events team and we have a marketing team. So quite often I'm leading those teams, so I'll be spending time with the events planners and understanding what events we've got going on, what things are missing, what's needed, what processes have been followed, what hasn't, what we've still got to do. And, you know, we can be doing so many multiple events each weekend, so we've got to make sure that each one of those is in line.
That takes some planning.
Exactly. Do we have the crew? You know, we've got 40 crew out there. Are they all going to the right places? Have they got enough vehicles? And
so the management of that is huge. And logistics is a massive thing anyway, but certainly for that amount of multiple events, it would be quite scary, I would imagine.
Sometimes.
And I'm assuming all of your days are fairly long, even when they're in the office.
Absolutely. And I mean, I guess I have the luxury now that I've worked with a great team, so we can kind of, you know, share the load a little bit, but we're always kind of recruiting and, you know, especially for the summer season.
In the early days,
oh no, absolutely. And I know that I had our first child at 2 in the morning. My husband was back on site at 6 in the morning.
That's dedication for you.
You couldn't phone the bride and say, we're not setting up today because I've just had a child. You just had to get on with it. And
absolutely.
You know, and that's the kind of lengths that you have to go to make sure that you build the reputation in the industry. So.
Which is actually really good advice, because I think that's what a lot of students, or our students particularly coming into the industry, don't realise just how much it's going to eat into your personal life, and that really is taking it to a whole other level, having a baby at 2 and being back out at the venue at 6. That's impressive stuff.
We have a saying at Papakata, and it's like, do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life. And it's true, everybody at Papakata has a passion for what they do, and that's why I love, you know, spending time with the team, because actually we all bounce from each other and give each other the ideas, and you know, sit and go through style blogs and, you know, living magazines, those kind of things. And actually it's great to have that kind of creativity and passion together.
So today is quite a special day. Obviously we're here for Wedding Hour Live, but it's also about the launch of Sperry Tents, which is a new product for you guys. And in fact, we're actually sat in one of the tents here at the moment, which is absolutely gorgeous. And I can just imagine how beautiful it's going to be later when it gets a bit darker and all the lights come on. So how did you find out about Sperry Tents, and, you know, what's the story there?
Yeah, so we're always on blogs and in different countries, especially America. And actually my husband found it on a Martha's Vineyard blog, Martha Stewart's blog. And he kept seeing these images and was just thinking, these are really beautiful. And I remember him saying to me, would you mind if I go and see them? And he actually went out to see the Sperry family.
So he actually was really going on a proper work trip then. This
absolutely,
wasn't just a jolly to
definitely.
America.
Well, I think he had a lot of jolly fun there too. But yeah, he saw them, and he actually phoned up Sperry and said to them who we are and what we're thinking of doing, and they'd heard of us, which was fantastic. So
your reputation had already preceded you.
It had, and so there was a shared connection there, and Richard went out to meet them, and they're built in basically a log cabin in Massachusetts by the Sperry family, who've been doing it for, you know, 70 years, and they absolutely, it's all about the craftsmanship. They're a sailing family, so the tents are made out of sailcloths, and the flower detail all comes from those kind of nautical inspirations. Richard spent 2 days putting them up and just fell in love with them. You know, the way the product's made and engineered, you know,
and there's a story behind the product too, isn't it? It's got meaning.
Yeah, and you know, they actually, Tim Sperry, his dad, made the first Sperry tent for a village carnival, and it actually gave him the idea, and he made it originally out of his sailcloths. And from there he decided, well, I could do this but on a different scale. And I mean, they have 70 franchises in America, so they're a really big company. It's huge.
And you've got the exclusive rights here in the UK.
We do, which is really exciting. You know, there's a lot of competition for tents out there, but we believe, you know, these are really exciting products.
This is a different style of product.
Absolutely.
And I know certainly within the research that we do at the Academy, we know that this type of venue is sort of quite high in demand at the moment, because people are looking for something that a little bit more alternative. They want the ability to be able to have events out in the country somewhere in the middle of a field.
Party till the small hours.
Absolutely, where there's not as many restrictions. And of course, when you look at unusual venues like let's say, for example, a museum or an art gallery, there are so many restrictions around that, whereas with a tent like this, well,
you create your own space.
Absolutely.
And we think they're really complementary to the teepees as well. So, you know, the teepees have quite a warm, rustic feel, but actually we thought, you know, there's definitely a demand for something much more glamorous and, you know, giving that kind of style as well.
So Amanda, have you got any advice for brides out there who are looking to make the transition from bride to business owner and come into this wonderful wedding industry of ours? Some pearls of wisdom of things you learnt when you first started your business.
For me, I think it's about building your reputation and networking with the right people, but for me, to build your reputation, you have to always be available. And one thing that as a bride, and knowing lots of brides, that they expect that kind of level of service. You know, often they're professional women,
that's right.
and actually they expect the level of service that they use at work in a corporate environment. So it's not a fluffy kind of industry. It's about creating those processes and making sure that you know, dot the I's and cross the T's, and just always available for your client. And by doing that, you're going to create that reputation for quality, and that's so key in this industry.
Well, we always say to our students, one word of advice is to under promise and over deliver.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
that way you can't go wrong, which
Yeah.
fits in very nicely
Yeah.
with what you were saying there.
Definitely, and you know, things like managing people's expectations.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of brides imagine that they're going to have, you know, a beautiful sunny day, and actually, if that's all they're dreaming
We're in
about,
England.
we just
We
cannot
don't
guarantee
get
that,
beautiful sunny days.
as we know today.
Exactly.
And but actually, none of that matters. So I suppose it's getting
Yeah.
across to the bride that what they're going to remember on the day is the feeling that they get, as opposed to the tiny details and obsessing over those.
Yeah, and I think that can very easily be forgotten, so that's really good
Yeah.
advice. Well, thank you for spending the time with me. I'm sure we're going to have a fabulous event tonight. I'm really looking
Sure.
forward to coming back when everybody's here, having a drink with everybody and seeing this gorgeous tent all lit up in all its glory.
Wonderful.
Which we will be doing. Now, we're going to be talking to you later as well about styling and how you can style a tent like this and some of your styling tips and ideas. So I'm looking forward to that one. But for now, it was another edition of the Wedding Wednesday Report. Thank you for joining us, and don't forget, if you want to do something like Amanda here has done, then you need to jump on our website, which is www.weddingplanningacademy.co.uk, and have a look at our courses, and you too could be starting your own wedding planning business.